Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic. Today we've got something rather special, I think. This is a puzzle that Mark has designed. So we've had a very popular couple of videos in the last 3 weeks on this variant of Sudoku called Between 1 and 9 Sudoku, and I'll explain the rules in a minute for those of you who aren't familiar with it. But Mark thought he'd try his hand at actually creating one of these. He says he thinks this is a very difficult puzzle, so we've got that to look forward to in a moment. But I hope this won't be the last puzzle that you'll see from us on the channel over the coming weeks and months. We're certainly hoping to branch out a little bit and show you more of the puzzles that we create as well, which we hope you'll obviously enjoy. Now, let's remind ourselves how these puzzles work. So the idea, let's pick row 3 for example. You can see this has a 26 alongside it. Now the rules of this puzzle mean that wherever we place the 1 in this row, let's just say for example we place the 1 here, then between the 1 and the 9, between this cell and this cell, everything we put in these 4 cells would have to sum to 26. So this is the constraint, and what that allows us to do is to sort of make deductions. Certainly at the start we need to definitely focus on the 1s and 9s. They are going to be the most important numbers, at least for a while. And in fact, if we look at row 3, we could never place the 1 here. So have a think about why that is. So remembering that we need to look at the numbers between the 1 and the 9, so the contents of this cell, and this cell, and they would have to sum to 26. Well, if we're using 3 numbers, the biggest numbers we could use would be 8, 7 and 6, and they only sum to 21, so the 1 can never be here. The 1's going to have to be in one of those 2 positions, and it's logic like that that we're going to have to employ. Now, when I stare at this grid at the start, the other numbers obviously that jump out are the zeros, because they mean that there cannot be a number between the 1 and the 9. But so in this, or looking at this one here, we know that the 9 must be in one of those 2 positions, because there must be a 0 total between the 1 and the 9. And let's just see if we can use that. And we can. Okay, this is a nice trick. I don't know whether Mark set this up deliberately, but let's look at the possibility of this cell being a 9. Now you can see in the column here we have a 23 total. Now 23 is interesting. We've just looked at it in the context of these 3 cells. So we said the maximum value of 3 cells between a 1 and a 9 is 21. So that's 8, 7 and 6 obviously. So if I was to even put the 1 the furthest away from a 9 in this position, so right at the top or right at the bottom, let's count how many digits we can have. We can have 1, 2, a maximum of 3 squares between the 1 and the 9, if the 9 is in the central position. And we know that can never get as high as 23. So it is impossible for there to be a 9 in that position there. This must be the 9. Sorry, as you can probably hear, I have a cold at the moment as well, which I'm sure doesn't help my solving. Okay, so what would I look at next? Well, I would probably, let's have a look at row 1 in fact. Where can we place a 9 along this row? Obviously it can't go in any of these 3 squares because there's already a 9 in this block. I think the 9 can go here. The reason it's interesting obviously is that it's this 2 total. So we know that the arrangement we're going to have here is going to have to look something like that. 1, 2, 9, i.e. there's only going to be 1 square between the 1 and the 9. And that is quite restricting. So can the 9, for example, go here? I'm not sure it can. Let me show you why. Because of the logic I've just mentioned, we know that if the 9 is here, one possibility would be that this would be a 2 and this would be a 1. Well, we can rule out that option, because let's have a look down the column. There's 23 needs to be the sum of the numbers between the 1 and the 9 in this column. So if I have a 1 here, there's only going to be one number between the 1 and the 9, and that obviously won't add up to 23, so that option's ruled out. If on the other hand we go this way, we run into a problem in this box. We know the 1 in this box is locked into one of these two positions because of the 26 total that we did right at the start, so this is not a 1. So this cannot be the 9. This can't be a 9, we already have a 9 in the column. This can't be a 9, rather beautifully, because obviously if we put 2, 1 this way, we have a problem with the 1s down here. But if we go 2, 1 this way, we actually get clashes in the columns. We get a 2 here and a 1 here, both clash. And now, obviously, this can't be a 9 either, because let's have a look at column 8. There's a 0 in column 8, so the implications of a 9 here would be that there must be a 1 there. And we know that the 1 in this 3x3 block is in one of these two positions. So that's not possible. Same reasoning here, 9 can't go here either. So in fact, there is only one position for a 9 in this row. And that means the 1 is either going to be here or here. And I think both of those are possible at the moment. Let's have a look at this column now, 23, so we've already thought a bit about 23. But we can do some arithmetic. Now, this is one of the things I like about these puzzles, is that they sort of have an overlap with Kukuru logic or Killer Sudoku logic. So we have a 1 here, so there can't be a 1 in either of these positions. So we know the 1 is in one of these three positions in order to create the room for us to get up to the number 23. But, let's just think about this for a moment. Let's say the 1 was here. That would imply that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cells between the 1 and the 9 would sum to 23. We'd then add the 1, add the 9. That would give us 33. But we know the total of any column in a Sudoku will have to be 45, because it will contain all of the numbers from 1 to 9 exactly once each. So the 1 can never be here, because that would imply this cell needed to add to 12 on its own. So in fact, there is only one position for a 1 in column 4, and that's here. And we know now also these two cells will sum to 12, but we can't tell how they're going to do that, because we've only ruled out one of the options for 12 in 2 cells. 12 in 2 cells can be made with a 3, 9, that's ruled out, a 4, 8, or a 5 and a 7. So we're going to have to just remember that and come back to it. This very clever design, though, actually. I shouldn't give Mark too many plaudits. He'll get a big head. But let's have a look at this 15 now in the interaction with this 1. So obviously we're focusing on 1s and 9s. So can the 9 go here? And you might instantly think, well, yes, it could, because we've got 2 squares, and 2 squares can add up to 15. Well, they can usually, but not in this particular instance, because there are 2 ways of making 15 in 2 cells. We could have a 7 and an 8, well, that's ruled out by this 7 that's already in the row. Or we could have a 6 and a 9, and that would lead to a repeated 9. If I make these 2 cells 6 and 9, we'd have a repeated 9 in the row. So the 9 is not here. So the 9 is to the right of the 1. And, so there's 2 positions on the face of it can go. Let's look at this one. If the 9 is here, then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 squares between the 1 and the 9, and we need those 4 squares to add to 15. And we know one of those squares is already a 7. So I need the other 3 squares to add up to 8. Now those of you who are good Killer Sudoku players will know immediately that in order to make 8 with 3 different numbers, you must have the number 1 in those options, because the options are either 1, 2 and 5 or 1, 3 and 4, and those 2 are going to lead to a repeated 1 in the row. So this is not the 9. This square is the 9. And we can see from the 0 here, that means there's either going to be a 1 in this position or this position. I'm not sure I can eliminate those options yet. It might be possible, but I'm not quite seeing how. Ah, well, hang on. If this was the 1, we would have a problem, wouldn't we? Because if this was the 1, because of this 2 here, that would imply I needed to put a 2 and a 9 like that, which is not possible. So in fact, this is not the 1. The 1 must be higher. This is the 1. And that means that this is the 1. And the 9 is either here or here. Looks like either of those is still possible. And then in terms of the 9 in row 6, well, actually this is great. We can actually place the 9. Have a think about why I think we can place the 9. And it's to do with logic we've already used, which is sort of sum logic on the row. Well, sum as in SUM. So we know we're going to have 23 between the 1 and the 9. 1 and the 9 add up to 10, obviously, so that's 33 in total. So I know I need to leave 2 cells outside of the 1 and the 9 pair. So it's not possible, for example, for this to be a 9, because then there would only be 1 cell, this one, outside the 1 and the 9. So this is an option. And there's no other option, in fact, that even makes any remote sense. So that must be the 9. And this 23 here means that the 1 must be higher. So it must be either, oh, in fact, it must be here, because we must have at least 4 cells gap in order to get to 23. So this is the 1, which means this is a 2 because of the 2 here. We can pencil mark 1s into one of these 2 positions because of the 23 total at the bottom. 2, 9, 9, 9. We know the 9 will be in one of those 2 positions in this 3x3 block by simple Sudoku rules. 9 here, 9 here, and this 9 here. 2, 9. Simple Sudoku rules, we can place a 1 in this square. So I now know these 2 squares here sum up to 12. But I think there are still 2 options again, 4, 8, and 5, 7 in order to do that. 1s must be in one of these 2 positions. And 9s must be in one of these 2 positions. Okay, and now we can think about this 2-4 pair. Yeah, this is clever again, clever design. So, because we know in this row there will be exactly 1 digit between the 1 and the 9, and in this row there will be exactly 1 digit between the 1 and the 9, it's not possible, if you think about it, for there to be an offset. So, for example, if we were to try the 1 here and the 9 here, although that works for this row, it totally breaks this row, because it would place the 9 here and the 1 here, and there's far too big a gap, obviously now, between the 1 and the 9 in the 9th row. So in fact, we know for sure either the 2 will be here and the 4 will be here, or the 2 will be here and the 4 will be here. And look, we have a 2 here. So this can never be a 2, which means this can never be the 9 in row 8. So we can eliminate those options, and we get to write in a load of digits. We get to go 9, 2, 1, 9, 4, 1, like that, which is obviously helpful. Now that means this is a 1 up here, and I can see that's going to immediately allow us to make more progress. So let's come back to that in a second. Let's just take a check on where 9s can go. 9s. Okay, so we've done all the 1s. We've got 2 more 9s to find. And okay, well, yeah, this because we've managed to fix a 1 here, this 29 cage forces this to be the 9. Obviously, if the 9 was here, that would imply that 29 plus 10 is equal to 45, which it clearly isn't. So this is a 9 and this is a 9 to resolve that. And these two cells, which are outside of the 29 sum, have got to be 6. Now, why do I say 6? That's because we know these 5 cells here are going to add to 29. Plus 9 plus 1 is 39. Therefore, these two cells must add up to 6. And they can't use a 1. So this is a 2 and a 4 pair. Oops, like that. These two cells sum to 8, but we can't. This could be 3, 5 or 2, 6 at the moment. Let's come back to the thing I noticed earlier, which was this 10 total in the column. We need these 3 cells to sum to 10 without using a 1. So there's only one way of doing that. That must be 2, 3 and 5. Oh, we have a 2 here, so there's only one place the 2 can go. This is definitely a 2. This is a 3 or a 5, and this is a 3 or a 5. Okay. 15. Ah! Haha! Look at this 3, 5 pair now, and the way this interacts on row 7 of the grid. So if we've got this 15 total lying between the 1 and the 9. We already have a 7 here. So I know these two squares sum to 8. Well, they can't be 1 and 7. We've already got a 1 and a 7 in the row. And now they can't be 3 and 5, because if I make them 3 and 5, I have to fill these 3 cells only with the numbers 3 and 5, and that's going to lead to a clash. So this must be 2 and 6, which must be this way round. 2 and 6 like that. Get to pencil mark 2's at the top there. Well, this must be very restricted now. Between the 1 and the 9, I need them to add up to 12. It can't be 4, 8 anymore, so this must be 5 and 7. Which means this is a 3, 8, and this is a 3, 8, just to complete the column. Everything, there's so many restrictions now. Yeah, let's have a look at this column now. Again, we can use the 23 logic again. I know these two cells sum to 12. I know they can't be 3, 9 or 4, 8. So this is 5 and 7 as well, which makes this 3 and 8. This feels like we're very close to cracking this completely. Not being clever enough to see how to do that. Ah, this row now. So we've managed to use the 10 to limit this cell to a 3 or a 5, but now we can use the row logic to go further. We know that the cells outside the numbers 1 to 9 must add up to 12, because we're going to have 23 into these cells, plus the 9 plus the 1 is 33, so this cell and this cell must add up to 12, and we can't have 3 and 9 as an option. This has got to be 5. Therefore, this must be 7. Now this 3, is that useful? It locks a 3 into one of those two positions. Ah, we have 2's as well locked into one of those positions. Ah, now this 8 is useful. Where can we place an 8 in this block? Only here. So we need 4, 5 and 6 somehow to complete this box all together. And over here we need, what's that going to be, a 4 and a 5 into these two squares. Feels like we're close to being able to do something with this column as well. 33, 10, 3, 7 or 4, 6. I think I'm being a bit silly at not spotting how to do that. It's the same logic actually on column 2 as well. Again, we've got 3 digits outside of the 23 total. So these 3 squares have to add to 12 as well with a 2. Ah, that is good enough though this time, because we've limited this to 4 or a 5. So let me just talk through that again. I know these 4 cells sum to 23, plus 9 plus 1 is 33, so these 3 cells must sum up to 12 because I know the total for the column will be 45, and we already have a 2 here. So this is all a very long-winded way of saying that this cell and this cell sum to 10. Well, if I put 5 in here, that will make this a 5, which is clearly not right. So this is a 4. This is a 6. Maybe that will allow us to do a bit more. We can pencil mark 5s into those 2 squares. Down here we're looking at 7, which is nice because that resolves this. That must be 5, 7 in that order. 7, 6, 2. Again, I now sort of feel like there must be a quick way of making progress. Yes, okay, so now we can use this column. So, yeah, well done, Mark. This is a very clever puzzle. Not easy. I do hope you tried it before you watched me solve it, because I think, you know, it's a good test, this. So, let's have a look at what I'm trying to explain here. If we look, we've got the number 1 and 9 here, that adds up to 10, plus these 4 cells here add to 23, so that's 33. So I know this cell, plus this cell, plus this cell must add up to 12, and we already have a 2 here. So again, this cell and this cell sum to 10. Well, if I choose 8 here, that's going to put a 2 into this cell. That's not possible. So that resolves everything down there. This must be a 3. Now you can see I've got 5, 8 pair into these 2 positions because of the 8 here. And I've got 4, 6 and 7 to complete the column. Let's just pencil mark all that in. And in this column it looks like I've got 3 and, what's that, 3 and 7. Okay, so that's all working. And down here we've got 4, 6 and 8. Again, get rid of that, I suppose. 4, 6, 8, 4, 6, 8. Alright, and now let's try and spot something new. We've got the 4 here as well, so this actually has to be 8. 9 we've already used. We've used the logic on this square. We have not used the logic on this square, look, or this column. So I know that I've got 14 to place between the 1 and the 9, and I've got a 2 already. So I can't have 3 here because that's going to place a 9. So this must be 8 and 4, like that, which resolves the 4 and the 6. 5 and 7 must be in these 2 positions by straightforward Sudoku logic. We have a 5 and a 7 here. That locks the 5, 7 pair like that, which resolves this square. These 2 squares have got to be 3 and 8, I think, to complete this box, which makes these 2 squares up here 2 and 4. So there is some weird symmetry about so much of this. I don't know whether Mark's designed it that way, but certainly that's the way it feels as I'm going through the solve. 1, 7, this 3 here means this is an 8 at the top. Again, I should be, now I can make more progress using this 8. I know these 2 squares add to 8, they can't be 1, 7, they can't be 3, 5, so this is 2, 6, which gives me an opportunity to resolve a couple more numbers. Let's tidy up the pencil marks. This must be a 5 or an 8 now, just to complete this row, and there's an 8 down there. So in fact that's a 5, that's an 8, that's a 5, which allows me to unwind the 7, 5 pair that we had earlier. To complete this column I now need 3 and 6, which unfortunately I can't disambiguate. But yes, I can. Sorry, this 26 is helpful, isn't it? Because now let's have a look at this. 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 26 is 36. These two squares must sum up to 9, and we already have a 5 here. So that goes 4 and 6 like that, which also resolves the conundrum up there. So I'm looking, I think, at 3 and 8, is it, to complete this row? Feels right. And that must be 4, 5, and 7 across the top, which places a 7 in the middle, like so. Let's take a look at this 21 sum now. That feels like the place we're going to have to look, I think. So 21 plus 10 is 31. So I know the sum of these three squares is going to have to be 14. So how can we do that? I suppose 8, 2 and 4 would work, and 3, 6 and 5 would also work. I may have done that wrong, but I think, annoyingly, either option there seems valid. So let's try something else instead. This must be a 3 or an 8. That gives me a 3-8 pair in this column. Is it simple Sudoku rules that I'm going to need to crack this open from here? It seems unlikely. I suspect I'm missing a trick. I can do a trick with the 2's, look. The 2's in row 9 are locked into these two positions, and the 2's in row 4 are locked into these two positions. So I know there can be no 2's in this square, or this square. So the 2 in column 7 must be here. And that ought to be a useful breakthrough, because that disambiguates this total here. We said these three cells here needed to sum to 14. Well, now the only way of doing that with what's left is if this is an 8 and this is a 4. That resolves the 2 and the 3. That resolves the 2 and the 4 there. That means this is a 4, 5, 6 in that order. This is a 3, this is a 3, this is an 8. And we're looking for 5, 6 and 8 to complete. So 5, 8, 6, and there we go. So, very interesting puzzle from Mark there. Something a bit different, as I say. One of our own puzzles for a change. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up. Some of you may be in a position to even sponsor us on Patreon, and we really would appreciate that. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.